Bubba Wallace did not just miss a race, he missed his son being born. And then he came back to the track and said out loud that nothing about how he drives, what he chases, or what winning means to him will ever be the same again. Bubba Wallace missed his son being born, not because he forgot, not because he did not care, because he was at a racetrack. And when he finally held that baby and came back to the world of NASCAR, he sat down and said something that most drivers would never say out loud. He admitted it changed everything, not just his mindset, not just his off-season routine, everything. How he thinks about a race weekend, how he thinks about a points battle, how he thinks about what he is actually doing out there at 200 miles per hour on a Sunday afternoon. Think about that for a second. This is a guy who has been fighting his entire career to prove he belongs, fighting the critics, fighting the noise, fighting the pressure of being one of the most visible drivers in the sport. And now he is standing up and saying, yeah, all of that looks different to me now. That is honesty. That is the kind of honesty that makes fans either love a driver more or start to wonder if the fire is gone. And honestly, that tension is exactly what makes this story so hard to look away from. Bubba's son, Beckett, was born during the 2025 season. The timing was brutal. Race schedules do not bend for anyone, not for legends, not for rookies, not for new fathers. Bubba was not in that hospital room when it happened. He was doing his job, the job he has sacrificed so much to keep, but something cracked open in him after that. In his own words, and this is the admission that started every conversation, Bubba said, "Missing the birth of my son was the hardest thing I have ever done in this sport, and it made me realize I was racing for the wrong reasons for a long time." Let that sink in. A Cup Series driver, a 23XI racing driver, a driver backed by one of the most talked about ownership groups in NASCAR history, saying publicly that he was racing for the wrong reasons. That is not a throwaway quote. That is not media day fluff. That is a man processing something real in front of a microphone, and the people who follow Bubba closely, his fans, his team, the people inside that 45 car, they all heard it. They all felt the shift. Here is what made it land even harder. Bubba did not stop at the admission. He went further. He said 2026 is going to look different, not just feel different, look different, different approach to race weekends, different conversations with his crew chief, different relationship with the pressure of performing. He said again his words, "I am not chasing the same thing anymore. I know what I am racing for now." Now look, you can hear that and think, good for him, that is beautiful, healthy mindset. Or you can hear that and think, wait, does a driver with different priorities still have the same killer instinct when it matters? Both reactions are valid, and both of them are going to get answered over the next 36 races. If you are the kind of NASCAR fan who thinks the human story behind the helmet matters just as much as the lap times, and honestly, if you are watching this, you probably are hit that like button and subscribe. Because this channel is exactly that kind of place. We are not here to just read finishing positions. We are here to talk about what is actually happening in this sport, the real stuff, and there is a lot more of that coming. Because here is the thing, the Bubba admission is only half the story. The other half, it is already showing up on the racetrack, and it is more complicated than anyone expected. What do you think? Does a driver who admits he was racing for the wrong reasons suddenly become more dangerous, or does it make him easier to predict? Drop that thought in your head for now. We are getting there. So Bubba said it out loud. He admitted the birth of his son rewired something in him. He admitted he was chasing the wrong things, and he drew a line before Beckett and after Beckett. But here is where the story stops being just emotional and starts being tactical. Because Bubba Wallace did not come into 2026 quiet, he came in loud, new energy in the garage, different body language at the hauler, Crew members who have been around him for years have noticed it. You could feel it at Daytona. The way he talked in pre-race interviews had a different weight to it, less defensive, more settled, and on the track, the first few weeks of 2026 have shown flashes of something, a driver who is not white-knuckling every corner. A driver who is not racing scared of the mistake, a driver who looks, and this is the word people around the team keep using, free. Now that word means different things depending on who you ask. To Bubba's fans, free means unlocked. Like the mental weight he carried for years, the weight of proving himself, of silencing critics, of carrying a flag bigger than just his own career, has finally been set down. And what is left is just a guy who loves racing and knows exactly why. To the skeptics, free means loose, unanchored, like a driver who has made peace with things before he has actually earned that peace, like someone who has decided results matter less before the results have actually gotten better. Both camps have been loud in 2026. And Bubba has not tried to shut either of them up, which, honestly, is itself new. The old Bubba would have fired back. The old Bubba had a short fuse with criticism and an even shorter fuse with doubt. That was not a character flaw, that was survival instinct for someone who had been knocked around in this sport since the day he arrived. You fight back or you get buried. But the new Bubba, he lets it sit. He answers questions without a wall up. He talks about his son with a kind of calm that you just cannot fake in front of cameras. His crew chief has picked up on it. In a recent session, Bubba apparently told the team before a run, and this was relayed by someone in the garage, that he wanted to focus on building the car right over the whole race rather than gambling early for track position. That is a conservative call. That is a patient call. That is not a call the Bubba Wallace of 2023 or 2024 makes. And in that race, he did not win, but he finished clean. He brought home points. He did not blow a tire chasing the leader on lap 80 when the math said hold. Small thing, big signal. But here is what nobody is talking about yet. 23XI Racing is not just managing one driver's personal evolution right now. They are managing two championship-level conversations, a legal situation that is still not fully resolved, an expansion that changed the entire structure of the organization, and an ownership presence, Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, that carries its own weight and its own expectations. Bubba finding peace is good for Bubba, but does it fit what 23XI actually needs from him in 2026? Because here is the thing about that team right now, they need points, they need heat, they need a driver who attacks. The legal fight with NASCAR over the charter system, the noise around the organization, the pressure to show that 23XI belongs at the top, none of that gets answered by a driver who is content and patient. It gets answered by a driver who is hungry. And what Bubba is describing, this recalibrated version of himself, sounds like peace, not hunger. That is not a criticism. That is a question, a real one. And the 2026 season is going to answer it whether anyone is ready or not. Here is the bigger picture that nobody wants to say directly. NASCAR has a complicated history with drivers who have public emotional reckonings mid-career. Sometimes it unlocks them, you have seen it. A driver hits a wall personally, rebuilds, comes back with something to prove that is different from ego, and suddenly they are racing at a level nobody expected. It is real. It happens. But sometimes, and this is the part that is uncomfortable, the reckoning becomes the story. And the reckoning starts to matter more to the driver than the results. And then the results follow. Bubba Wallace is at that fork right now. He is 32 years old. He is entering what should be one of the sharpest windows of his career, experienced enough to read a race, young enough to still have the physical edge. His equipment at 23XI is legitimate. His team believes in him. His ownership group has invested serious money and serious reputation into this whole project. The pieces are there, but the 2026 championship is not going to be decided by who has the best personal clarity. It is going to be decided by who is willing to be ruthless for 36 weeks straight, who is willing to take a gamble on lap 312 when everything is on the line, who is willing to wreck a relationship in the garage to gain 3 points in a stage, who is willing to go home to their family on a Sunday night and be honest that the race mattered more than anything else that day. And Bubba just told us out loud that racing no longer matters more than anything else. He said it himself. He knows what he is racing for now: his son, his family, a version of the sport that fits his life instead of consuming it. Respect that completely, mean it, but championship racing does not respect balance. It never has. The drivers on the short list for a title in 2026, you know who they are. They are not out here talking about healthy perspective. They are not in interviews saying the sport looks different to them now. They are locked in and they are hunting. That gap in mentality, it shows up in the data before it shows up in the standings. Let that sink in. 23 Xi Racing built something real. Bubba Wallace has genuine talent. The 45 car has legitimate speed. And a driver who has finally figured out who he is might be more dangerous than everyone, because he is not racing scared anymore, because he has nothing left to prove to anyone but himself. And this is what keeps this story alive, he has quietly accepted a version of his career that stops just short of the thing he was always capable of. Nobody knows which one it is yet. Maybe Bubba does not know either. That is what makes 2026 different, not the championship math, not the team structure, not the legal drama still floating around the sport. It is this: one of the most talented and most human drivers in the garage just told us he changed. And we are all about to find out what that actually means when the pressure is real, and the points are tight, and the championship window is either opening or closing for good. So here is the question, and be honest in the comments. Do you think Bubba Wallace's mindset shift makes him a genuine championship contender in 2026? Or do you think it costs him the edge he needed to get there? Because if you are a NASCAR fan who wants to have that conversation at full volume, not the safe version, the real version, then like this, leave that comment and subscribe, because this is where we talk about the sport like it actually matters, which it does. And there is a whole season ahead of us that is going to keep delivering exactly this kind of story.